Hello and welcome to everybody watching this. This is the first out of a two-part series based on the introduction to aerodynamics. I really hope that all of you are keeping safe and practicing social distancing during these tough times. So we at Motor Manipal thought that it would be a really nice idea for us to share a bit of our knowledge with you guys. Now, aerodynamics isn't really a topic that you would have come across up until now, unless, of course, you have chosen a specific stream that would be automobile, mechanical, or aeronautical engineering. Now, aerodynamics really is a beautiful and interesting topic once you get to know everything. But I just want to give you a taste of the basics, and we'll come across some really interesting stuff towards the end of the video. So, yeah, I really hope you learn something new by the time you finish this video. So yeah, let's jump right in. So yeah, allow me to introduce my colleague and I. Syed Musharraf is the aerodynamics head at Motor Manipal. He's a brilliant aerodynamicist and he focuses mainly on computational fluid dynamics as well as composites. Myself, my name is Rishabh Suri and I'm the team leader at Motor Manipal. I mainly focus on computer-aided analysis as well as heat transfer, and I'll be guiding you throughout this video lecture. A little about Motor Manipal. We are Manipal University's only student project working on an electric bike. We were founded in the year 2018 and developed our first e-bike in less than a year. Towards the end of 2019, we participated in our debut competition, which was the Asian e-bike challenge held in Vizag. We did tremendously well and we were also featured in the Times of India newspaper. Motor Manipal comprises of 5 subsystems, namely mechanical, aerodynamics, e-powertrain, management, as well as research. And we are currently working on making our first e-race bike, which we will be taking to Moto Student India, which will be held at Coimbatore. The aerodynamic subsystem in Motor Manipal is further divided into 5 parts. These 5 parts mainly focus on computer-aided design, computational fluid dynamics, manufacturing engineering, heat transfer, as well as cooling systems. Okay, so let's begin. Now, first of all, what is aerodynamics? We can split the word into 2 parts. Aero means air, and dynamics literally means movement. So, when you put that together, it's basically the study of airflow around an object. Now, aerodynamics is a subset of fluid dynamics. Fluid dynamics, as you can guess, deals with liquids and gases, whereas aerodynamics deals with only gases. And most often than not, we usually deal with air. Now, a few important aspects of aerodynamics are obviously the first has to be the design phase. You set all your blueprints up, you get your designs ready, you make your CAD, and then there are various factors that you have to take into consideration, like the cooling of, let's say, an engine or your battery case if it's an electric vehicle or a motor. All these things heat up very quickly, and you know, many sports cars and bikes they rely on aerodynamics to help guide the air towards these components so that they can cool easily and faster. So yeah, apart from that, performance improvement, aesthetics, and ergonomics. And finally, after all of this is taken into consideration, you have to actually analyze everything and see if your design is actually feasible and it works. So it is a very tedious process, but it's fun along the way. So yeah. Yeah, coming on to the types of airflow, it's mainly divided into 2 types, laminar flow and turbulent flow. Laminar flow is more smooth and the air layers are streamlined and parallel to each other, and turbulent flow is more random and unpredictable. A common term that you'll come across in aerodynamics is the Reynolds number. Now, it's just a number that helps us identify the type of airflow, whether it's laminar or turbulent flow or in the transition phase. Transition phase is nothing but when the flow is just starting to get turbulent, right? So, the transition from laminar to turbulent flow is known as the transition phase. Probably the most important application of the Reynolds number is when it comes to wind tunnel testing. Now, let's take an aeroplane for example. A 747 is a huge aircraft, and if we have to do the analysis of it in a wind tunnel, it's just not feasible enough to make a huge wind tunnel just to fit in that one aircraft in. So what we can do is, using the Reynolds number, we can scale we can scale the entire model down along with the other variables. Yeah, and test it in a smaller wind tunnel, and we get exactly the same results once we scale it back up. So yeah, that actually helps companies to save time and money, which is very important. Yeah, so the next couple of slides we're going to focus on airplanes. There are 4 major forces that an airplane experiences when it flies through the air. The first is thrust, which is nothing but the forward force which is produced by the engines in order to help the aircraft move through the air. Gravitational force basically pulls the aircraft towards the earth. Now, drag and lift are the 2 most important terms that we're going to talk about when it comes to aerodynamics. Drag is nothing but the resisting force that an object experiences when it flows through the air. So it's an opposing force, right? And yeah, lift we're going to talk about pretty soon. I just want to let you know there are a number of types of drag forces, but as I mentioned earlier, we're not going to get into the details. Don't want to go too deep, just to give you an idea, you know. Yeah, so let's talk about lift now. Lift and downforce. Okay, lift is basically the vertical force component that acts on an airfoil. Right, what is an airfoil? Now, if you imagine the cross section of a wing, okay, the side view of an airplane, and you just take the wing component of it and you just slice it in half, that is what you'll see. What's on the bottom right of your screen, that is an airfoil. Okay, that's how the wing looks like if you cut it in half, and that's actually the main producer of lift on an aircraft. Now, coming to the topic of how lift is generated, that actually is a very controversial topic in today's world still, because if I tell you that the Coanda effect is the actual theorem that causes lift in an aircraft, I'm going to have thousands of people who say, no, it's Bernoulli's theory of lift, or it's Newton's theory, or the two combined. So yeah, uh, as of now, I'm going to stick with Bernoulli's theorem of lift, just so that it's easy for you to understand. It's not a hard concept. And I'm sure if any of you have taken science in your plus two, you would have definitely come across Bernoulli's equation and the Venturi effect as well, if you've had fluid mechanics in your classes. So yeah, now there are various theories that are actually incorrect. They were proposed early on. For example, the equal transit theory and skipping stone theory. Don't want to get into the details, but if you do a little research and if you have a good physics background, you'll understand why they're incorrect. So yeah, lift is not easy to calculate. Actually, no one actually has calculated the an actual figure for the amount of lift that is generated through an airfoil, but it can be predicted pretty accurately. And nowadays we use the Navier-Stokes equation. Some of you might have heard of it. So that is the most commonly used equation to predict lift. Once again, we'll be focusing on Bernoulli's theory of lift. It is not the entire reason why lift is generated or how downforce is caused, but yeah, just for the convenience of this video and to make it easy for y'all to understand, we're going to go ahead with that topic. Before I get into Bernoulli's theorem, let me just finish off the concept of drag and the coefficient of drag real quick. As I mentioned earlier, drag is nothing but the resistance to airflow when an object moves around a body. The coefficient of drag actually is just a judging criteria for us for aerodynamic performance. Now, if you notice the table on the bottom right of your screen, you can see that the most aerodynamic shape that is known to us is the streamlined body or a teardrop shape. And it has a coefficient of drag of 0.04, which is extremely low, right? Now, if you notice, this is actually very similar to the airfoil shape, which I showed you in the previous slide. If you like, you can rewind and check it out. So yeah, that is the main reason why wings adopt this shape. Now, a lower coefficient of drag does not really mean that you have better performance. It actually depends on what aspect of performance you're trying to improve. Now, if you want a higher top speed, right, then you want a low coefficient of drag. But that sacrifices your cornering ability, especially in road vehicles. So the best example I can give you is a Formula One. They travel at really high speeds, and they also want to take corners at those high speeds. And many of these cars actually have a coefficient of drag of close to 1 and sometimes even above 1. Now, if you notice the table again, you can see that a cube actually has a coefficient of drag of 1. So now these Formula One cars have immensely huge drag, but that's what helps them corner at such high speeds. Okay, so this is where everything starts. This is where we learn all the actual applications of aerodynamics and everything. Okay, so Bernoulli's theorem basically states that pressure is inversely proportional to velocity. Easy, right? Yeah, just keep that in mind and everything is just going to fall into place throughout the entire video from now on. Okay, so I just want to mention this again. It is not the entire reason why lift is generated, but it's the easiest way I can explain all the concepts to you. Now, just check out the image on the right hand side of your screen. The air currents flow from the right hand side to the left hand side. The faster air moves over the wing, okay, over the airfoil, and you have slower air underneath, okay, slow moving air underneath. Now, according to Bernoulli's theorem, velocity is inversely proportional to pressure. So now you have a higher pressure area underneath the wing, okay, and lower pressure over the wing, because faster air flows over the wing, lower pressure over the wing. Now obviously high pressure, high pressure overpowers the lower pressure region. So what's actually happening is the the high pressure region is pushing the airfoil in an upward direction, which according to Bernoulli's theorem causes lift. So just keep that concept in mind and we're good to go. Again, I cannot emphasize this enough. This phenomena does take place, but again, it is not the actual reason why lift is generated. All right. The Venturi effect is an application of the Bernoulli's theorem. It's the same thing basically, except we're just adding another variable, which is area of cross section. Now, air pressure is directly proportional to the area of cross section, and we know that pressure is inversely proportional to velocity of air. That means the velocity of air is inversely proportional to the area of cross section. That's all. All right. Now, the Venturi effect also has various applications. The most common of which are pitot tubes. A pitot tube is an instrument which is placed outside of an aircraft, which helps measure the airspeed, and diffusers as well, which are placed in cars, which help reduce downforce. We'll talk about that a little later on. Flow separation and boundary layer are actually two very important topics in aerodynamics, but in order to understand them completely, we have to go into an immense amount of detail, which we're not going to for this video. So for convenience sake, I'm gonna completely shove boundary layer out. So yeah, let's focus a little bit on flow separation, just the basics, so that we can move on. Now, first, we need to understand a couple of terms. First is, what is a camber line or a camber line? On the image that you see on your screen, you have an airfoil and the flow of air is moving from the left hand side to the right hand side. Camber line is nothing but an imaginary line from the front tip of your airfoil to the end tip of the airfoil, okay? So it's a straight imaginary line through your airfoil. Angle of attack is nothing but the angle that the camber line makes to the horizontal, and the horizontal is the airflow, okay? Now, the higher your angle of attack is, the better lift you get, or the more lift you generate. But obviously, there is an extent to which this is possible. It's known as the critical angle of attack, and it's usually around 45 degrees. Now, anything beyond 45 degrees, it will create an aerodynamic stall. So that's basically when you get the negative effect of lift. So instead of the pushing the airplane up, you're actually reducing and compromising on your top speed as well as the amount of lift that you're generating, and you're not creating lift anymore. You're going in the opposite direction. So you basically go down. Okay, so anything beyond the critical angle of attack creates aerodynamic stall. Now, it is possible to go beyond 45 degrees if you maintain enough speed, but that will only last you a certain period of time before you end up in stall and start swirling towards the ground. Yeah. As I mentioned in the previous slide, a wake is a low pressure region behind a moving body when it flows through the air. It causes a lot of drag and it is undesirable. And yeah, again, vortices are formed when an extremely high pressure region flows into an extremely low pressure region. And these are very visible on modern day Formula One cars when they approach extremely high speeds, over 350 kilometers per hour on the straights. The faster you move through the air, the bigger wake you create behind. So that is your low pressure region. And the rear wing of a Formula One car creates extremely high pressure region, especially on the tips. So that's what forms the vortices, and it's very visible. Yeah, finally getting to downforce. Probably my favorite topic about aerodynamics. It's essentially the same thing, right, as lift, but it's the exact opposite. So instead of trying to push your object upwards, you're trying to keep your object on the ground without lifting the body off the surface of the road. So yeah, it's also known as negative lift, and I believe almost every car on the road uses downforce generating devices, but downforce does have its negative effects. So the more downforce you try to apply to an object, the slower its top speed gets. I did mention this when we were discussing about drag, right? So drag and downforce, they go hand in hand, right? So the more downforce you generate from a vehicle, the more drag you get, which does reduce your top speed, and vice versa. So depending on the application, you have to identify how much downforce you would like to generate to your vehicle. Okay, so this is the part of the video where we start to bring everything that we've learned from the first slide all together. Everything from what is aerodynamics, the types of airflow, wakes, vortices, drag, downforce, the Venturi effect, Bernoulli's theorem, everything comes together over here. So if you've made it this far throughout the video, I congratulate you. And yeah, by the end of the next two slides, you will have a good idea of how Formula One aerodynamics works. Now, the reason I explained Bernoulli's theorem to explain the lift generation to you is so that we could use the same concept and apply it to downforce. How did we use Bernoulli's principle to prove the theory of lift generation? Let's just recall that for a second. So we had an airfoil and we shaped it and placed it in such a way that you have a low velocity uh, airflow flowing underneath the airfoil, which creates a high pressure region, right? According to Bernoulli's theorem, pressure is inversely proportional to velocity. Okay, so obviously we'll have a higher velocity flowing over the airfoil, which creates lower pressure. So the high pressure overpowers the lower pressure region, and it essentially pushes the airfoil into the air. How do we create downforce? You take that exact explanation which I gave it you and turn it over. So basically, take your airfoil and turn it by 180 degrees, and there you go, you've created downforce. Okay, so now what's happening? If you can visualize it, now you have a higher velocity flowing underneath the airfoil. So you have a lower pressure region underneath the airfoil, and you have high pressure region over the airfoil. So what's happening? You're pushing the object towards the ground, which is the opposite of lift. That is downforce. That is basically what downforce is. You're trying to keep the object stuck towards the ground. And if you check out the pictures that I provided for you, if you see the wing structure, you can see that it's the exact opposite shape of what an airfoil is. It's literally a wing turned over 180 degrees. That's basically it, right? So yeah, that's the basic geometry of front and rear wings on a Formula One car. Even spoilers, there is a slight difference between rear wing and a spoiler. But yeah, it's the same concept. Even winglets on the top right picture, uh, they are also shaped at an angle as a rear wing, which also helps create the front end downforce on a race bike. But yeah, you can use Bernoulli's principle to understand how the downforce is created at the front and rear wings of an F1 car. Coming on to the diffuser and the floor. A diffuser, that's the term we came across when we were talking about the Venturi effect. Let's just recall what the Venturi effect states. Uh, the area of cross section is directly proportional to the air pressure, and both of those are inversely proportional to the air velocity. So what's happening here? What does a diffuser do? A diffuser, it increases the cross sectional area of your vehicle by a certain extent. So what's happening, right? Whatever that manages to enter the floor of the car is entering through a very narrow and a small area of cross section compared to the rear end. Diffusers are usually placed at the end of the vehicle. Okay, so since the area of cross section is really low, you get immense amount of air velocity that enters the bottom part of your car, and according to Bernoulli's principle, pressure is inversely proportional to velocity. So you have very low pressure region at majority of the space of your car, right? So what's happening is you have high pressure region over the car, which again creates downforce, and the diffuser, it just enhances the uh, the, the the process, right? Yeah, the floor also plays a part. The shape of the floor, again, with respect to the cross sectional area, and the bodywork, the way in which you shape the car, also plays a major role in how the downforce is generated on your vehicle. Uh, an easy way to explain how that works is, if you have a very boxy car, you get a lot of flow separation, right? And we do not want flow separation. We want flow separation to be very minimal. So you want the air particles to stick to the surface of your vehicle. So the way in which you create your race car or motorbike is very essential in creating downforce. Okay, so if you noticed in the previous slide, I had mentioned vortex generators as a downforce generating device. But I mentioned earlier that vortices are undesirable, right? So they don't necessarily create downforce, but they do help in reducing the flow separation that takes place. Okay, so if you look at the left hand side picture, you see these inverted U-shaped protrusions on the wing of the car, right? Uh, Now, those are essentially the vortex generators. And when you have air flowing, right, and interacting with this front wing, after each horizontal component, there will be some slight amount of flow separation, which is undesirable, right? And these vortex generators, they create that high pressure turbulent air, which helps, attract the low pressure region, right? So that the air molecules stick to the wing of the body. So yeah, those are basically how vortex generators help to increase the downforce of a vehicle. Now, abide boards are these protrusions that are placed on the side of the bodywork of the car. Uh, they they essentially help to reduce the flow separation too. The main role is to make a pathway for the air to stick to the surface of the car. So yeah, it does reduce flow separation, which also, as we know, increases the downforce. Now, what are louvers? Louvers are also vortex generators in their own way, but they act a little differently in terms of increasing the downforce. Uh, the louvers are actually highlighted on the right hand side picture in this yellow circle, so that those little rectangular slits placed on the end plates of the rear wing. Now, as we know, it's a little complex, all right, but I'll try to explain it to you. Uh, yeah, so as we know, there's a low pressure region when the car is moving at high speeds on the straights, just behind the vehicle, and you have extremely high pressure region, which are vortices that are formed not from the louvers right now, but from the tips at the back of the end plates of the rear wing, right? And we don't want those vortices. So what these louvers do, they generate high pressure regions, which are vortices, right? But in the opposite direction. Okay, so basically what it does, it helps cancel out the vortices which are formed at the end plates of the rear wing. So that's the easiest way I can put it to make you understand. Yeah, that basically helps us enhance the downforce of the vehicle. Yeah, so to conclude, aerodynamics is a beautiful subject, and we just scratch the tip of the iceberg of this amazing subject. And it's so much better when you understand all the details and you see real life applications being used about aerodynamics. So yeah, the importance of aerodynamics, as we discussed, it helps us to reduce the drag caused by the vehicle, helps us to enhance the performance of the vehicle, whether it be on the straights or on cornering. Internal cooling. Yeah, so cooling of the internal parts is very important in modern day vehicles, especially in sports. So, race cars and race bikes majorly depend on air cooling and the aerodynamics to cool the engine or the motor, battery, motor controller, all these parts, because they travel at such high speeds, right? So when you travel at 300 kilometers per hour, it's gonna be so effective if you use that air and channel it uh, towards a particular component in order to cool it. So many sports cars, they use ducts to channel the airflow, and these ducts are also made in such a way that once the airflow passes through, it does help in enhancing the downforce as well. Aesthetics and ergonomics is also very important to people who love the looks of the car, and yeah, aerodynamics helps in this as well. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you watched the whole video, it means a lot. I really hope that you guys have learned something new and can take something away from this video. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask Syed or me. We have our contact details over here. Do stay tuned for the second part of this video, which is a little more technical, which will be handled by Syed. He's going to be teaching you guys the basics of GSD, which is Generative Surface Design, using CATIA V5. He's going to teach you a quick way to make a pretty cool fairing. Fairing is basically the body of a bike. He's going to teach you ANSYS, which includes meshing and computational fluid dynamics. So yeah, by the end of that video, you will have learned how to carry out a successful simulation and create a pretty cool bike design. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you once again for watching. if you guys liked the content, I urge you to continue or do some of your research on your own, because once you start, you really won't stop if you like it. Yeah, stay safe, guys. Thanks.